Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth.
On Now You Know.
So this week on In Depth, we're covering the leaked climate change documents. And I guess first thing to ask is, what are these documents?
Yeah.
So these are nearly 700 pages of a document that came out during the last month of President Obama's administration. Mm-hmm. That was the first revision of it. It was for the first draft. Mm-hmm. And it's taken until now to kind of go through 5 different revisions of it. So now it's ready for final printing.
It's almost ready.
It's almost ready. And I guess someone in the federal government was afraid that it might get deep-sixed or changed dramatically. Mm-hmm. So it was leaked to the New York Times so that everyone could read it before possible changes could happen to it.
Yep.
It still needs final approval from many federal agencies before it's considered an official document.
Yep.
But what does basically the document say?
It's a culmination of a lot of different peer-reviewed scientific data, and it shows that climate change is real, first of all, and that it is mostly caused by humans.
Yeah, let's read some quotes from the report itself. It is extremely likely that the human influence has been the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. There is no convincing alternative explanation. That's pretty strong language.
Yep.
It's also stated in the report that with significant reductions in emissions of greenhouse gases, it's possible to keep the warming within the Paris Treaty's target of below 2 degrees Celsius. Without them, it's expected that warming could reach 5 degrees or more by the end of this century. A lot of people say, 5 degrees, that sounds great, actually. I'm in a kind of a colder climate. Like, I know the Russians, for instance, are very excited by global warming because much of Russia will be opened up to agriculture that it was never opened up to before. But I think they're overlooking a giant piece of this, which is it's not just a lovely 5 degrees warmer for everyone. It means that the whole Earth is out of balance. It means that the oceans will rise, and all these horrible things will happen.
Right.
Another quote from the report: to stabilize climate, however, it is not enough to halt the growth in annual carbon emissions. It is projected that global net carbon emissions will eventually need to reach 0.
Right.
So it's not like we can just kind of keep doing what we're doing now, just level it off. We need to reverse what we've been doing. I guess the fear was that the administration would not release this document, because we all know what's happened with the EPA, head of the EPA agency. He's a climate denier. There's this quote here from Peter Frumhoff, who's the Director of Science and Policy at the Union of Concerned Scientists, and he said that federal scientists' concerns that the administration will try to change or suppress this report are well-founded. The Trump administration has consistently demonstrated its lack of regard for science and evidence, including on climate change. This is why we're covering this in depth right now, because I think that this story, although it was widely covered in the news, it's hard to wrap your head around how significant this is. Mm-hmm. This isn't a wacko group that came up with this report or a couple scientists at a university.
Right.
This is peer-reviewed scientists throughout the federal government who have gone through all the studies that they can find and issued a report with strong language.
Right. And I think the scariest part is that someone, I think rather wisely, decided to leak it to the New York Times. I think it's scary because a lot of climate data is being deleted. There are a lot of climate scientists who turn on their computers and realize that half of their data is missing, that they've been collecting. It's scientific data and it's missing. It's caused this, lack of trust between scientists and the government.
And here's the thing, if you are a climate denier and you want to use some kind of scientific evidence or data to support your argument, that's great. That is what science is all about. We don't all have to agree on every bit of data that comes out.
But if you're deleting data,
right.
if you're
throwing away reports, deleting data, that's not science. Science is taking data and analyzing it, peer reviewing it, making sure it's good data, and then trying to figure out what the data is pointing to.
Right.
And you may come to a different conclusion. That's fine. That's all part of science, because then other scientists can review your conclusions and figure out if you're right, and we can all get smarter. That's fine. What we're talking about here is that we're throwing away reports, we're throwing away data because we're fearful of what it's pointing to, because we don't want it to point to what we don't like. Another quote from the report: Many lines of evidence demonstrate that human activities, especially emissions of greenhouse gases, are primarily responsible for the observed climate changes over the last 15 decades. There are no alternative explanations. There are no apparent natural cycles in the observational record that can explain the recent changes in climate. In addition, natural cycles within the Earth's climate system can only redistribute heat. They cannot be responsible for the observed increase in the overall heat content of the climate system. Internal variability, alternative explanations, or even unknown forcing factors cannot explain the majority of the observed changes in climate. We just want to stress, even though the story came out and then it kind of got put aside, we don't want this kind of data to be put aside. We need to wake up to the realities that are going on this planet, and all of us need to come up with solutions. One of which, of course, is our favorite, driving a Tesla.
Right.
Even though climate deniers seem to want to do two kind of arguments. They want to deny that climate's changing, but they also want to say that Teslas are worse. So it's like, what? Wait, if you don't care about the climate, why not drive anything? Which kind of shows their hand, doesn't it? Because it shows that they're not concerned about the climate. What they're really concerned about is changing the status quo. They profit from the status quo, and unfortunately, that would be fine, except that the status quo is what's killing the planet. Leave your comments below. We get kind of upset about things like this.
Yep.
Maybe you do too. But leave your comments below about things you saw in the report that interest you, your observations about whether this report was being deep sixed or something. Maybe you think opposite. Let us know.
And thank you so much for watching. I want to just give a quick thank you to our Patreon supporters. Without them, we would not be able to do this show.
That's true.
So thank you to our Patreon supporters.
Thank you.
And check out Tesla Time News coming out tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Now you know.